Jet Black one and only here with another exciting video, and in this video we're going to be talking about narrative powers and the Marvel Multiverse RPG. So narrative powers are a little different than the normal abilities in the Marvel Multiverse RPG because narrative powers are rules as written, meaning that they are extremely open to interpretation. You're not going to see the normal format of here is the prerequisite, here's what rank you need to be, here's the focus cost, or anything like that. You're just going to see a blurb of words, and what those words say is what the power does. Now, narrative powers are not meant for player characters to have, they're meant for non player characters that the narrator controls. With that being said, if you're the narrator of your Marvel Multiverse game, feel free to let your players use narrative powers. You control that universe, so at the end of the day, it's up to you. And if you're a player who wants to use narrative powers in a campaign, always make sure to talk to your narrator about doing so. And if your narrator's open to it, then by all means, you can jump in and do that. So, without further ado, let's hop in and start looking at some of these narrative powers that were introduced in the Marvel Multiverse role playing game in the brand new X-Men expansion. Bum ba bum 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 bum. So first, let's look over cannot lose. The character cannot lose any challenge or contest in which they participate. This is not the same as winning, so if there's a possibility that they neither win nor lose, that satisfies the conditions of not losing. The character must be careful about picking sides in any conflict. Their influence means the side they pick is the one most likely to prevail. However, their power may also compel them to switch sides so that they don't lose, even if that's not how they would prefer events to transpire. This prevents the character from simply choosing a winner in any conflict. The character cannot shut off this power, so it can sometimes feel more like a curse than a blessing. So first, let's talk about the cannot lose ability. I would say that it is personally not that broken, to be honest. Keep in mind that you can always tie or draw, and that also satisfy the ability, like it said. So just saying that, like, oh, as a rank 1 character, I have cannot lose, so I'm totally broken, isn't actually true. I could see situations where you're trying to stop a hostage situation at a bank or whatever, right? And you could be like, I. And see, this is like another thing about the cannot lose is like, how do you interpret a challenge or contest, right? Because fighting crime isn't necessarily a challenge or contest. Like, it seems like if you were just challenging someone to a fight, and it's like, I bet I could, like, beat you in a fight or whatever, that seems like when this power would trigger. But if you're just, like, doing normal crime fighting stuff, I'm not sure if that actually qualifies as a challenge or contest, which is kind of interesting. Um, so yeah, I think there's like a more narrow field for how this power works than one may think of on the surface. Like, you may assume that this just means that you cannot lose in any situation, but this seems to be specifically if you frame a situation as a challenge or contest, then you'll likely tie in order to keep you from just being completely broken. And even in situations where you tie, I could see it being where both parties kind of come out empty handed, or both parties come out having lost something. So neither party really comes out on top. You could say they both evenly lose, but in a way where you wouldn't actually say that either side lost, for example. So I don't know. I don't think cannot lose is actually that good. Let me know in the comment section below how powerful you think cannot lose actually is. Next up, we have DNA manipulation. The character is able to identify, copy, and manipulate DNA in themselves and others. They can use this to create a body from scratch that they can then occupy by using the copy psyche power. In addition, the character can cause latent mutant powers to manifest upon command, both in their own body and in that of others. They can also copy DNA from other people and insert it into their body to fool security systems into thinking that they are members of a particular genetic group or family line. Now, I think DNA manipulation is particularly cracked, to be honest, and I do have a few questions about it. So, one question that I have has to do with the line: they can use this to create a body from scratch that they can then occupy by using the copy psyche power. Would you need to have the copy psyche power as a separate ability in order to actually, take control of bodies that you create? Or since you can use DNA manipulation to cause latent mutant powers to manifest upon command, both in your own body and in the body of others, could you just use that ability to manifest the copy psychic power or copy psyche power within yourself and then take over the body that way? You know, is DNA manipulation just a free ticket to use any power in the book because you can just say, oh, well, I like manifest that power within me and now I just have it? And when it says that you can cause latent mutant powers to manifest, is it more that you have to actually have that power latent within you for you to manifest it? Or since your ability allows you to manipulate DNA, can you make a mutant ability latent within you that wasn't latent within you before? Because you just changed your DNA and now latent within me, I have bone claw powers. I just need to like unlock it and now I can like use it kind of thing. It's also a question of mine about whether or not you can steal powers from people. The description doesn't really say that you can take powers away or make someone who is a mutant not a mutant, but it seems like a lot of the things that it says you can do, it implies that you could do the opposite, but it doesn't say you could do the opposite. I would say that if you want to play this rules as written without making the power particularly broken, essentially use like a nerfed version of DNA manipulation, then you can't do anything that it doesn't explicitly say you can do, meaning that implied uses of the ability are just ignored. So, if you believe that by manipulating DNA in yourself and others means that you can take powers away from people, but the description doesn't specifically say that that's something that you can do with it, then you as a narrator could say, oh, well, you can't do that because it doesn't go as far as to say that you can do that specifically. With that being said, I feel like you could have a lot of fun with this ability. One very useful part of this power is the ability to create bodies from scratch, because that also kind of creates an interesting scenario. So think about this: you want to create a dinosaur as a minion to fight for you. So you use DNA manipulation to create a dinosaur body. But notice that when you create a body, it's one that you can occupy by copying your psyche over into that body. But who's to say that the body itself doesn't already have a psyche? You're not creating a dead body because you're able to actually move your mind into that body, which implies that if you were to create some dinosaur body, would it not just be a living dinosaur until you plop your brain into it? Like, it seems like this should allow you to create minions, it should allow you to shapeshift, it should allow you to unlock whatever latent abilities that you have or that other people have. I just think this has a lot of promise. It's one of my favorite narrative powers that we've looked at so far. But the next one is particularly crazy and also particularly long. So without further ado, let's dive into Duplicate Self. With this power, the character can make copies of themselves. The duplicates are full fledged, identical copies of the original person, including all of their current clothing. They are indistinguishable from the original, right down to the genetic level. The number of duplicates a character can have is theoretically unlimited. As a practical matter, though, characters with this power prefer to keep track of their duplicates and don't go to outrageous lengths with their numbers. While duplicates generally take orders from the character, they are independent people who may balk at doing things they would find painful or distasteful. Often, a duplicate highlights an aspect of the character's personality, for good or bad, so they may act differently from the original. There is no limit to the amount of time a duplicate can exist. They can operate entirely independently and can even have their own adventures throughout the multiverse. The character has no direct control over their duplicates. They can generally trust them to work together, help the character, and execute the character's plans, but there can be exceptions. The character and the duplicates always know who the original character is, although others may have a hard time telling them apart. The character can absorb their duplicates back into their body. If the character or the duplicate has lost health or focus points, the original winds up with the average of their numbers when they absorb the duplicate. Absorbing injured duplicates can harm the character, but the converse is also true. Absorbing healthy duplicates can heal the character. When the character absorbs a duplicate, they gain all of the duplicate's memories. This includes any tags the duplicate may have gained on their own. In the case of conflicting tags, the character's tags normally take precedence over the duplicates, although it's up to the narrator to determine exactly how. On top of that, the character might have to deal with the consequences of their duplicate's actions, for good or ill. The character cannot absorb the memories of a dead duplicate. Attempting to do so only traumatizes the character, knocking them down to one focus. The duplicates can also make duplicates, but only the original character can absorb any of the duplicates, no matter their source. Duplicates usually don't mind being absorbed, but some rare ones may refuse to go quietly and may even harbor deep resentment against the character and wish to harm them. Characters with this power have a trigger that activates it. When the trigger happens, and only when the trigger happens, the power automatically activates, whether they wish it to or not. Similarly, they must define their trigger to absorb duplicates. When the trigger happens, they must absorb the affected duplicate, whether they wish to or not. Okay. So this one is a very interesting can of worms, and I'm very excited to talk about it. So I've been wanting Marvel Multiverse RPG to include some kind of cloning or doppelganger ability for a while, and before now, the easiest way to do so was to use time travel. You could essentially go back in time to a moment before you went back in time, and it would create two of you. And I actually have done campaigns before where my girlfriend Ashley played as a time traveler, and there were situations where there were like multiple Ashleys running around and doing stuff. This allows you to kind of do that without having to also deal with the repercussions of time travel. You can just have clones and not have to do time travel clones. I think it's a little silly that this power is locked behind being a narrative ability instead of just being in the game. I know how disruptive it can be to have clones, but like I just mentioned a second ago, you kind of already could have clones in the game using things like time travel, so it's really not that weird. In regards to the restrictions on duplicate self, their way of trying to like balance it a little bit, I think that the restrictions are fine for the most part, but is still pretty cracked. And some of the restrictions create weird scenarios. And I'd like to talk about a few of those scenarios right now. For example, if the duplicates have all of your current clothing, I kind of understand that. You don't want a bunch of naked clones walking around necessarily. But at the same time, let's say that my character is an Iron Man type character that just also happens to have duplicate self. So that means my character has a power armor suit that grants them like a number of different abilities. Well, now with duplicate self, you could have a duplicate of your armor suit. Essentially, just by wearing an armor suit, even one that isn't yours, you can now clone and have multiple armored suits. And then once you get your duplicate to get out of the suit and you absorb the duplicate back into yourself, wouldn't you then still have the extra armored suit? And couldn't you then give that armored suit to a party member, essentially allowing members of your party to now have your same armor suit power set? That's kind of interesting. There's also the whole duplicates can make duplicates thing. Woo wee mama, you can get really crazy with that. Like, for example, multiple man has a trigger for creating his duplicates that requires him to take 1 health point of damage. So whenever he gets hurt, he will automatically create a duplicate, which I find kind of fascinating. But I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to rein in his power because who wants to get hurt? Like, are you going to actively just hurt yourself a whole bunch to make clones? But if the duplicates can get hurt to make clones, then oh, what? You take like 1 health point of damage for you to make one clone, but then each of your clones can just take 1 health point of damage or whatever, to a certain extent, of course. and you can just keep on making a whole bunch of clones. The cost isn't really that high when the cost can be taken by the clones themselves, and you only have to pay the cost one time. That's more or less what I'm getting at there. Now, I like that the clones can become rogue. I've read a multiple man arc in the X-Men Infinity comics that was all about his clones going rogue and doing crazy stuff. So that's neat. That's very fun from like a narrator perspective. And it's kind of the way that I was doing the time travel duplicates thing in my campaign as well, where it's like, this is a version of you from an alternate timeline that you've traveled into, so you don't control that duplicate, and that duplicate may feel weird about you being there and things of that nature. Same type of logic can be used here. So I think this is a lot of fun. I think this could just kind of be in the game. One of the things that's interesting about the narrative powers is that because they don't have any like rank restriction, a rank 1 character can have any of these abilities, and we'll talk about that more later. But for now, another thing that I want to talk about is the whole you can't absorb a deceased duplicate. Now, keep in mind, you can have as a tag that your character is deceased. Like, you can essentially be a ghost in the Marvel Multiverse RPG. So, is the implication that if you're playing as a character that's already considered dead, or maybe even undead, like a vampire or something, and you have duplicate self, that you can't absorb your duplicates, even if you yourself are already technically dead? Just food for thought. Just like something that you guys can tell me in the comment section below what your thoughts are on that. Next up, we have instant evolution, which I think is one of the worst ones, one of the worst narrative powers. I understand why it's in here, and it makes sense that it exists, but it's really not that good of a power, and I'll explain why in a second. Instant evolution. The character instantly adapts to any threats against them. They develop new powers or abilities that can protect them from the threat. However, they don't have direct control over how this happens. For instance, if trapped in a dark room, they develop the ability to see in the dark. If being shot at, their power might give them bulletproof skin, allow them to turn intangible, or perhaps break the gun. It's up to the narrator how the power works in any specific situation. The power always serves to save the character, but it doesn't care about other people nearby, whether innocent bystanders or the character's best friends. If a bomb is about to go off in a room, for example, this power might make the character bomb proof, or perhaps able to stop the bomb, or it might simply teleport them a safe distance away, leaving everyone else in danger. Once the specified danger is over, the extra abilities disappear, as they are no longer needed. They never linger, no matter how much the character might want them to. So this is a good, oh, you don't get hurt power. And also it can activate in weird situations, like it's just dark, so you get a light, which is interesting. Because it's like, how do you define danger if it just being dark is like a, oh, I can glow or whatever? I think that's weird. Some powers already kind of protect you from stuff. For example, if you have a character that is extremely durable and a normal pistol isn't going to do any damage to you because you have like damage reduction, does instant evolution even activate in that instance, since your powers already would protect you? Or what if your character already has intangibility? You know, if I'm already intangible, does instant evolution activate to protect me, even though I'm already kind of protected from a thing? It's just like a weird power. Instant evolution seems like a neat ability if you have actually no other abilities whatsoever. But if you do have other abilities, it seems like it's kind of redundant. Also, one of the neat things about the Marvel Multiverse RPG is that there are so many ways to be immortal. They actually have added additional forms of immortality to the game, which surprised me. And there are also abilities that kind of benefit from death, where you might actually want to die in order to use the ability. And with instant evolution, it seems like death is kind of a impossibility for you, and it makes these like immortality powers and resurrection based powers kind of meaningless. So I don't know, I feel like instant evolution really doesn't add too much to the game, and I kind of have a distaste for it. It's fine. I honestly think you could put this in the game proper, with how many ways that you can make your character immune to things or make your character immortal. Is instant evolution even that big of a jump? Out of all of the narrative powers we've covered so far, I think the most broken one that feels like it would be difficult to fit into a game is DNA manipulation. It just seems like you can do so much with it. Any power that feels like it, in essence, is all powers is kind of cracked, right? But cannot lose really just means always tie, and also really just means always tie in contest or challenges which are very specific circumstances and don't apply to all things in life. So you can lose in respect to things that aren't contests and challenges, and only in contests and challenges will you tie at worst, right? And then duplicate self, like I said, you can already do that with time travel, so that's not really crazy. And then instant evolution, in some cases, is just going to be redundant. And in some other cases, will even just be like more of a hampering on what you're trying to do than if you were to just use your normal powers. Like the whole a bomb's going to go off and you're trying to save people situation. Again, if you're a durable enough character, you could survive the bomb blast and possibly, like, you know, get people out of the explosion before it happens. But if instant evolution activates and it just teleports you away, now you're not in the bomb area, but the bomb wasn't going to hurt you anyways, and then it like kills a bunch of people. Instant evolution seems like it's a hampering, like a curse, rather than a real power. But enough harping on how much that particular power, in my opinion, kind of sucks, especially since I'm running out of time to do this video. Let's talk about restart. When the character dies, the entire timeline restarts from the moment of their first consciousness, and they retain the memories from their previous lives. This gives them the chance to start over multiple times, although they have to live through those years in real time. There may be a limit to the number of times the character can restart, but they might not know it. A character with precognition might be able to tell how many lives are ahead of them, or perhaps just give a range, but there's no way to know for sure. It could be that they'll restart their lives indefinitely, or their present life could be their last one. There's only so much that one person can do when facing the grand sweep of history, but even one's life's knowledge can give a character a huge advantage for improving their personal situation. It's easy to build wealth when you know what the future brings. This power should be used rarely, if at all. If the players go through an entire adventure only to have the timeline get reset out of the blue, they might feel like they've been cheated. On the other hand, if the point of an adventure is to reset a timeline to prevent a horrible thing from happening, that could transform it from a rug pull into a moment of triumph. The restart power supposedly demolishes the timeline that the previous life took place in. However, that doesn't mean the old timelines no longer exist in the multiverse. Every time a character with this power dies and restarts, there's a universe out there somewhere in which the character didn't have the power, or one in which the power finally failed. And such places can be reached by those traveling multiverse. Restart is really cool. I honestly like Restart a lot. And it's one of those, this is why instant evolution sucks, because if you had both of these powers, you could essentially never trigger restart because instant evolution would keep you from dying. Restart honestly needs a whole video in and of itself, but just to cover like the high points of restart, I love it because I've run campaigns with Krakoan mutants where the whole idea is like when they die, they come back to life. And I've also run campaigns with time travelers where there are like multiple time travelers around, but one of the time travelers dies, but one of their variants is still alive. And then you carry on with like the variant and stuff like that. So I've seen how players react to dying and then being able to continue. And I've also seen players react to dying and then traveling back in time to try and like change things. And restart is an interesting way to play that same kind of way with the characters coming back, but in a way that creates an entirely new universe while still leaving the other universes as accessible travel points. I think restart would be a lot of fun with a character that is a time traveler, so that they actually could go back to those previous timelines if they wanted to. They don't even have to play with the new timeline that they restarted, but they can. There's just a lot that goes into this. Like I said, I feel like I don't have enough time to really talk about this one. So maybe a future video I'll dive in further and talk about restart. So I only have a few minutes left in the video, so I'm going to now rank these narrative powers and talk about which ones that I think are more fun than others. I think the best one is DNA manipulation. I think it's so good that it's actually kind of cracked, and I understand why it's a narrative power, unlike the other abilities, which I feel like could just be in the game proper. I think the next craziest ability, probably restart. Any ability that allows you to come back to life is pretty good, but an ability that literally creates a new universe every time your character dies and essentially gives your character tons of future knowledge that they can use to change the course of the story is pretty interesting. So, restart is definitely my second favorite. My third favorite would have to be duplicate self. Again, you could already kind of do it with time travel, but I love the implications of duplicate self. I can see a lot of fun stories being told using this ability in particular. Then we have cannot lose. Like I said, cannot lose is very easy to nerf by just interpreting the way it's written. It already feels nerfed in the way that it's written, and I think it could just be a power. It's really not that cracked. And then I would say that the worst ability is instant evolution. I'm sorry, you just rather use immunities or other immortality powers than have instant evolution, in my opinion. But what are your thoughts? Definitely let me know in the comment section below. And thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black One Only, logging out. Peace. Chicken a bow.